Namaskar, welcome back to Media Scan, your weekend dose of headlines, controversies and perspectives. For last several days, viewers, Government of India has been repeatedly saying that we have nothing to do with the killing of the slain terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada. Government has also stressed how Canada seems to have become lately this haven for criminals, for terrorists, for drug peddlers, gangsters, whatnot. Meanwhile, a very interesting comment has come from the son of the slain terrorist who claims his father was in constant touch and interaction with the Canadian Secret Service and often used to keep meeting them. In the light of all these developments, the question that we want to raise here is, did Prime Minister Trudeau jump the gun? Or did he lie on the floor of the Canadian Parliament? To discuss this, I have here with me a very interesting panel of guests. Let me introduce to you my first guest for the evening, Kushal Mehra, joining us from the US. He lives both in the US and in Canada. He is most well known for all those digital consumers who have been following his very, very popular Charvak podcasts, known for its incisive perspective and commentary on current affairs. Namaskar, Kushal Mehra, welcome.
Namaste. Thank you very much for having me.
Also with us, Utsav Sanduja, a guest from the US who is a researcher. He has been studying and researching on this entire challenge of the Khalistani separatism. Very recently, Utsav has submitted his report to the US Congress. He has been commenting on the current events profusely. Welcome, Utsav. Namaskar.
Namaste. Honored to be here.
Colonel Arasan Singh, war veteran, also formerly of the RNAW. He is a regular commentator on Media Scan, and you have been listening to his very, very strong-worded views in the past. Welcome back, Colonel Arasan Singh. Kushal Mehra, I'll come to you first. And very straight question. In the light of the statement that has come from the slain terrorist Nijjar's son, the fact that Government of India has said that not a shred of evidence has been given to us till date in the past so many days, neither has the Canadian law enforcing system been able to find out anything about the killing of Nijjar at the local level. Putting all this in perspective, do you think Prime Minister Trudeau lied on the floor of the Canadian Parliament?
Well, as far as if we go by the reports, it's quite clear that Prime Minister Trudeau has misdirected, or as they say, it was a misguided missile that was used by Prime Minister Trudeau. Now, what the reasons could be are multiple, but it's quite obvious as of now, because if somebody says they have, if you look at the language of the Canadian side over the last 10 days, since I'm talking about since the allegations were made last Monday, since last Monday, the words being used are changing constantly. First, there was credible evidence. Then we reduced it to credible allegations. And each and every time when the Indian side asked them to produce the evidence so that, it can be shown to the public, we never know. Even recently, I think it was a couple of days ago when one of Trudeau's coalition partners, Jagmeet Singh, when Jagmeet Singh was asked, have you seen the evidence? He said, yes, I have seen the evidence. It is quite exhaustible. What exactly is it? Can you tell us? When the media asked a follow-up question, Jagmeet Singh says, no, I cannot. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a lot of wishy-washy talking. It's a lot of passing the buck on to some other people. And if you ask me, it's more about not addressing the real issue, which is the Canadian government, and not just this government. It's a historical trend of the Canadian government, starting right from Prime Minister Trudeau's father, right from that era, right up till today, of sheltering and harboring nefarious elements that have been creating havoc, not just in Canada, but in certain parts of India.
Okay, since you've made a reference to Jagmeet Singh, I'll just ask a very, very quick query, and then I'll come to Utsav. My quick query is that, a lot has been spoken and written and analyzed about the fact that Justin Trudeau is so much under the clutches of his the Jagmeet Singh's party, which is supporting him, that it was purely a political compulsion for him. But now we observe that the Canadian media, which had taken a different sort of direction in the beginning, but has now started to question Trudeau because of, the way he is handling his foreign policy. And now even within Mr. Trudeau's party, there are voices questioning the move that he has made. Is Justin Trudeau a really isolated man today?
Well, isolated, yes, because if you look at the last 10 days, they've not been good for the current Prime Minister of Canada, starting from the like I said, the wishy-washy allegations hurled at India to standing up and applauding a literal Nazi inside the parliament. Let us just say that it's not been a good 10 days for the Prime Minister of Canada. And we have to remember that this was not just a single time thing. If people, I would like to remind people again of 2018, when the then Prime Minister of Canada, the same gentleman, Justin Trudeau, had visited India at that time. And at that time, a convicted person named Jaspal Atwal was part of the Prime Minister's coterie who was attending various functions.
And even then, he had not really come out with a clear answer. But can I come to Utsav now? Utsav, there is a lot of chatter going on about the role of USA in this whole situation. To be honest, the Five Eyes, including the USA, have given a very tepid response to President Trudeau's allegations and the way he's been trying to take a maximalist position on the issue. But at the same time, while nobody has come out straightforward in support of Canada or even questioned India, there are voices such as that of Antony Blinken, etc., which show that somewhere the USA, USA's role is not very clear in front of us. So, I mean, being there, how do you see the US positioning on the matter? Are there contradictory strains on this whole issue? How do you see it going ahead?
So from what we learned from the Washington Post article on the matter, it appears that there was intelligence shared from the United States, but it wasn't very clear cut. And it was actually the Canadians that specifically interpreted the intelligence to lead them to believe that India was responsible for the assassination of Mr. Nijjar.
When our External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, was in the US, he had made it clear that there was no question of India being involved at any stage in this entire matter. So in the light of that, do you think what exactly is the US trying to do?
Well, I think the United States has an obligation to share its intelligence with its fellow Five Eyes members. It has to do that. I mean, that's just the way it functions. It's an alliance, essentially. And that alliance goes back to World War II. It's an obligation. But again, I go back to that Washington Post article that basically said that the Canadians interpreted this intelligence and they reached this conclusion that India was responsible. But personally, you're asking me, I actually have a lot of counter theories on who actually killed this gentleman, if he is to be called a gentleman.
All right. We'll come to that. But before that, can I come to our Colonel Arasan Singh here? Colonel Arasan Singh, they have been claiming, the Canadian establishment, that they have credible allegations. It's another matter that the phrase credible allegation itself sounds like an oxymoron. However, no evidence has come to the public domain. Even government is claiming they don't have anything. Meanwhile, Government of India, our agencies rather, have started a massive crackdown against Khalistani terrorists, their supporters, seizing their properties, arresting them here, etc. From here, sir, how do you see this going on internationally and within India?
No, we have given a very clear message, and it should be known to everybody that, or it's a well-known fact that Khalistani project was a project, a joint project between the US and the West combined, and the ISI. Who doesn't know it? So when they, started this project, it was with a lot of anguish and anger because, anger and anguish of losing the 71 war. And that is where the project started and really took off when Zia-ul-Haq, was in the helm of Pakistan. So it was a joint project. So, the Americans will do what they can do is to protect these leverages. And remember one thing that, the West is very fond of Pakistan because it is their creation for strategic purposes. And the strategic imperatives have not waned much. It only, it reinvents itself in different ways. So all the leverages that Pakistan has, whether in terms of jihadi tanzeems or, or the, Khalistanis, they are the leverages of the West as well. So it's not surprising to me that, David Cohen, who is the US ambassador to Canada, he's talked of Five Eyes and he has talked of, proof against India, etc., etc. It is not at all. What happened in San Francisco? San Francisco, our consulate was attacked there. That's not in Canada. Then what happened in Australia? So, look, there is a huge sense of entitlement, the West has against India. And look, sitting in some other corner of this globe, how do they control these countries, whom they once ruled? It is through these, agencies, through these leverages, and Khalistanis being one of them. But so, yes, his son is absolutely right when he says, yes, this he must be, must have been mentored all these years by the Canadian intelligence.
Right.
And let me tell you
but Colonel Singh, you are also an intelligence man, an intelligence serviceman. Very straight question, sir. What, in your understanding, you also must have an observation on the whole situation, I'm sure. Who do you think, what is your theory, who might have killed Nijjar?
No, I always go by whichever theory says that the ISI and the Canadian intelligence was involved, I'll go by that theory. Because it is they who nurture these fellows. I mean, we know the type of, there are 2-3 shades of people who migrate to the West. And there is one shade, and that's a huge chunk, which is good for nothing. They're given to all sorts of criminal activities.
Right.
I know most of them, even after having spent 2 decades, they can barely speak the language of the land.
Right.
So they are up to all sorts of nefarious activities. That is how this crime project started from Canada.
Got it, sir.
And let me tell you, the Western countries are very easily given to crime. It is in their DNA.
Right. So I'll come to Utsav Sandhuja here. Utsav, number one, you were saying that you have a different understanding or theory of what's going on this Khalistan thing. And secondly, my question is, like you said, is it become a matter of policy for some countries in the West to nurture gangsters and criminals and people who call for, the breakup of a nation, for example, in the context of the Khalistanis here? Quickly.
Well, I think, first of all, that there are some very good theories on who killed Mr. Nijjar. I'll straight up from the top of my head comes a gentleman, Malik, who was responsible for Air India 182 bombing. He was convicted on perjury. So as you recall, there was a whole spat between Malik and Nijjar over money. And what happened was that Mr. Nijjar had called for this guy, Malik, to be taught a lesson. And he was also basically viewed as a traitor in the community of the Khalistanis, and Nijjar had said this much. Malik had died. Malik's supporters were pissed, very angry. So it's possible that there was retribution from Malik's people against Mr. Nijjar.
So in one line, Utsav, in one line, that is gang war.
Yeah, pretty much. But I would say it's also political too, and really financial at the heart of it.
Right. And what do you think about the Khalistanis who are still operating from Canada, calling for protests every other day, and then making all kinds of threats? And now the threats have gone beyond threatening government of India, officials and functionaries. Now they have started threatening people, common people, asking Hindus to leave, etc.
Yeah, so this is absolutely, I think, a failure of the Canadian state in every way possible. And I don't think this is just an issue or a matter of vote bank politics. I think what it really comes down to is that if I were to be very cynical, the Canadians don't quite like everything India does in its foreign policy, in its relationships with other nations. And so definitely it is interesting that, the Canadians are very slow in moving with extraditions of terrible people, suspected terrorists, suspected gangsters, suspected mobsters. I still cannot understand why Arj Dalla, purportedly is in Canada from what we know. How on earth is he operating so safely? I mean, there was a local Congress leader in Punjab who was assassinated. No justice has been done to this man.
Yes, very pertinent question, and I want to carry forward that question to my other guest, Kushal Mehra. Kushal Mehra, a very straight question. First, Justin Trudeau brought these allegations on the floor of Parliament, indicating at India, and then he went on and pissed off all the Jewish community by doing what they did. And now there are countries in East Europe who are angry with him. In the meantime, not much help has come to him from his allies of the Five Eyes. So my question to you is, this time round, when I see the latest comment by Mr. Trudeau, it seems he is now stressing on having very good relations with India, the trade ties, etc. Do you think he is making a step back?
Well, I can assure you he's going to take a step back because if you look at the trade relation between India and Canada, there is an asymmetry there. When we look at Canada and India, Canada is not even a top 30 trading partner of India. But if you turn it around, India is actually a top 10 trading partner of Canada. On the another very important factor that people need to remember is there's a very subtle thing that people are avoiding. When India actually stopped issuing fresh visas for Canadian citizens for a temporary basis, Canada did not reciprocate that action. Now, the natural question somebody had to ask themselves is, why didn't Canada not reciprocate? Because there was the tit for tat going on, right? The reason is that 41% or approximately 40% of Canadian international students, which are there in the province of Ontario itself, which is one of the biggest provinces of Canada, where I think 37% of Canada's population is in Ontario. And 68% of Canada's university revenue comes from international students. And if 40% of international students of Ontario are Indians, they can't stop visas. So they don't have any leverage on India. That is point number one. Now, it's very interesting. I've already seen some articles started to be printed in media where the cover has been laid for how shoddy CSIS operatives gave bad intel to the Prime Minister of Canada that is eventually led the Prime Minister of Canada to say what he said on the floor of the House of Commons. Basically, the ground is being laid so that they can dump it all on the intelligence agencies, and the Prime Minister can just, wash his hands off and say, I'm innocent, I didn't know, I just acted to the, to the information. But one thing I want to remind everyone, I think this gang war element is not taken seriously. And another thing is how the gang war element uses different industries across Canada to actually bully people. One of the major industries in Canada is the rap and hip hop genre, which is deeply involved in this industry of gang war and promotes gang culture. But also there are a few leaders that are very interestingly peddled by the Khalistanis in Canada, whether it's, Navdeep Bains, the MLA from Alberta, Parmeet Singh Boparia. Then obviously everybody talks about Jagmeet Singh. Nobody talks about these other names that are there. And I would really love everyone to remember these names, whether it's Harjeet Sajjan, Gurinder Brar. People don't remember Gurinder Brar. Gurinder Brar was actively involved during the farmers' protest. And these are just or on the conservative side, there is Tim Uppal. Please remember these names. These names are very important. And these names are the ones who are pressing the levers, and Trudeau just dances to them.
Okay. That's a very interesting addition to the entire conversation. I'll take it forward to Colonel Arasan Singh. Colonel Arasan Singh, it's very easy for the commentariat to pin on all the blame on Jagmeet Singh because he is supporting the Trudeau government. But the fact remains, as Kushal Mehra just pointed out, there is this entire group of people living in Canada and other places who are pressurizing, who are openly supporting Khalistanis, and it is a much bigger constituency. So just pinning the blame on Jagmeet Singh may be actually not looking at the problem in its entirety?
The Khalistani ecosystem encompasses the United States as well, as I earlier said. So David Cohen is not wrong when he talks of Five Eyes. It's just not restricted to just intelligence. They do coordinate their, other, diplomatic activities with regard to security as well. But let me tell you, he spoke about the farmers' agitation. We know the place. And, well, I would say that there was an undeclared war by Canada on India. When this Khalistani agitation took place, it resulted with the assault, almost amounting to an assault on your red fort. And you read the statements of Trudeau during that period, and some of the Sikh leaders who are also members of parliament and ministers in Canada, and also some of these activists in the United States and UK. So it was a direct attack on India, leading to assault on the Red Fort, then leading on to, causing a loss of 77,000 crores. You were just talking about the students, Indian students in Canada. We contribute something like 68,000 crores. And here was 77,000 crores loss. And all for what? The backdrop of this farmer, so-called, Khalistani, farmer agitation backed by Khalistani was that Canada is a major supplier of pulses, lintel to India. I think, we consume about 23 lakh tons, out of which about 5 or 6 lakh tons is supplied by Canada. So we had embarked on a new agricultural policy, to encourage our farmers to grow, pulses here, and that is why they orchestrated this entire farmers' agitation. And please read a book, by one Stuart Bell. He wrote this book in 2004, Cold Terrorism: How Canada nurtures and exports terrorism, around the world. Read that book. And what he says, the book opens with a quote from a Canadian, CSIS chief, Canadian Security and Intelligence chief. He says that apart from America, Canada is home to the most number of terrorist organizations in the world.
Right. So, Kushal Mehra, very quickly, I have very little time left with me, so I have a very direct question for you. Is Canada pursuing this policy of harboring terrorists and criminals and terror-accused people as a matter of state policy? Is it becoming Pakistan 2.0?
Well, I don't know if it is Pakistan 2.0 in totality, but definitely from the point of view of harboring terrorists. I mean, they clearly don't have a vetting system when gang war after gang war happens in between India and the Indian state of Punjab and Surrey and Brampton, which is part of Canada. And you just have one element in it, and they all seem to find a way in Canada. I mean, there are Interpol red corner notices for one person after the other, and they seem to be finding, home in Canada. So somebody has to question their intentions.
Yes.
Can I make an absolute statement? No, but I definitely feel that Canada has a lot to answer for.
In one line, Utsav Sanduja, quickly, because I have to wrap up the conversation for this evening. We know what Canada is doing because not just India, several countries have been raising this. Very recently, the Bangladeshi foreign minister was complaining how, terrorists from their country ran away to Canada and they kept on asking for the extradition. Why is Canada so slow in responding to other countries of the world when it comes to these gangsters and terrorists, etc.? I mean, do they have any international responsibility at all?
Well, I mean, from Canada's point of view, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, they don't particularly see certain issues that India sees as a matter of, terrorism. They don't see it as an issue pertaining to security because they frankly believe that people ought to have the right to express terrible ideas, terrible thoughts, secessionism. They believe that these countries, these liberal Western countries, can essentially eschew anything that goes up to a line that's not violent.
But I'm sorry, Utsav, I'm sorry. While they allow, all kinds of hate speech and floats, floats that are glamorizing the assassination of a former prime minister, they do not apply the same principles of freedom of expression when it comes to protest of their own people. There are clearly double standards.
100%, and I've talked about it all the time. In fact, I used to work for the government of Canada under Stephen Harper, and I can tell you a lot of people in his party were aghast to learn that the civil liberties of Canadians were robbed during the COVID pandemic. Make no doubt about it, there are double standards. And one thing I just want to say that's getting lost in this conversation, don't ignore the Chinese element. Justin Trudeau gets funded by a lot of wealthy Chinese oligarchs. Chinese Canadians, statistically speaking, vote liberal. What is Justin Trudeau in trouble for? Allowing Chinese interference to occur under his watch. I think the China lobby is pushing Trudeau to change the dial from China to India. And I would also encourage everyone to please look at Panu's links to China. There's a Chinese military company called Qui360 that has helped him out. Why is that Chinese military company helping him out? It's a sanctioned military company. The United States has sanctioned that company.
Fine, fine. So I think that brings us to an end of the conversation here. Some questions sadly have been left unanswered, but I think we'll have to get together one of these days again to reach to the bottom of the whole issue. But on that note, gentlemen, you have all three of you have given us a very, very profound perspective into this very complex situation. For the benefit of our readers, they will be helpful to us in understanding what's going to happen in the next few days. Meanwhile, thank you very much, Kushal Mehra, joining us from the US. Also, Utsav Sanduja and Colonel Arasan Singh, always very gracious to join us whenever we have requested you. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With the latest statements coming from Prime Minister Trudeau, Canada seems to be taking a step back. However, the questions that have been raised in the meantime need to be answered properly by the Canadian establishment. Meanwhile, the norms of international culture and international cooperation have to be kept in mind. Nobody's sovereignty can be questioned or pointed at publicly, whether inside the legislature or in a public forum. Government of India has made that very clear. We still wait for some credible evidence coming from the Canadian side. Meanwhile, it doesn't seem that the issue will go away from the headlines anytime soon. On that note, catch you again next weekend on Media Scan. Till then, namaskar.